Now, the first thing I do want to do tonight is to add my condolences both personally and on behalf of the whole of Fiat Chrysler to Susie Weldon. I know that all of us in this room share in the admiration for the skill, the courage, and the passion that made Dan a champion. As deserving as the award you just received, maybe, Susie, we do join you in mourning this tragic loss. And now to you, Keith. I want to, first of all, thank you for the kind words you used in introducing me tonight and for the invitation to participate in this World Congress. Now, starting speeches in a setting like this is always very difficult. It's especially when it's directed to an audience that has just enjoyed a full meal and 3 exhausting days at what appears to be an incredibly successful Detroit Auto Show. And it's especially difficult for me, having just finished the year with what I consider to be an inordinate number of awards and flattery directed at both me as a person and to Chrysler for the execution of its turnaround plan. And so I've decided to open with a parable, the kind of story that is a mixture of fiction and reality, and that we use to learn life lessons and then to pass them on to future generations. It's a story about husbandry, which is a noble profession devoted to the breeding of crops and of animals. And in this profession, the terms service or servicing are used to refer to the act of procreation or copulation between animals. And so, for example, when a stallion mates with a mare, it is said that the stallion is servicing the mare. Now, the parable is a story about bulls and cows, and it starts with 3 bulls that are grazing in a vast expanse of the Canadian prairies. And a young bull, a middle-aged bull, and a much older one. And all of a sudden, the young bull notices a group of appealing, attractive cows at the bottom of the hill, and he turns to the other 2 guys and he says, "Let's run down the hill and service all the cows." And the more experienced and sensible middle-aged bull answers, "Let's walk down and service just a few." And the road-tested old bull tops it all off by saying, "If we hide in the tall grass, maybe they will not see us." The moral of the story is relatively simple. There are times when hiding in the tall grass is the most sensible posture to take, and 2012 for me is the year. The string of achievements we at Chrysler pulled off in 2001 cannot be replicated, and we should not be suffering from any illusions that we can. Starting with the imported from Detroit Super Bowl ad in February to the December sales close, with U.S. sales up 37% for the month and 26% for the whole of 2011. We hit a number of balls right out of the park. And so the string, we know, could not be replicated. And therefore, in 2012, the marching orders for all of us are to keep our head down, stay humble, and to keep on pushing. Now, any other posture would carry with it the inherent risk that we will be the victims of a servicing act by one of our competitors, and that, to me, is not a pleasant prospect at best. Now, as an aside, just to load you up with cocktail conversation material, you should know that financial institutions use the term service or servicing to refer to their relationship with their clients, which finally explains the high degree of discomfort I've always felt after a meeting with bankers in Wall Street. And also, Keith, I will be remiss if I did not thank you for your holiday present, even though I know in my heart that the fruitcake was regifted. And as I understand your theory, there are only 6 or 7 fruitcakes that exist, and they keep on getting passed around since no one actually eats them, and they're basically indestructible. So I think I can accurately predict that you will get your fruitcake back at some future occasion. I just want you to remember one thing, Keith, it's the thought that counts. Now, enough for levities. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I had the privilege to speak to this World Congress 2 years ago. Some, not many things, have not changed since then. For example, my wardrobe choice, and aside from my preference for black on black, many events over the past 2 years were not foreseeable, proving once again something which I've always believed in, that the only thing that's constant is change. 2 years ago, no one could have forecast the massive oil spill that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico, a tsunami that would devastate Japan, and the protest movements would overthrow long-standing regimes in the Arab world. All of these events deeply affected the lives of millions of people, and their effects have rippled through our business world with outcomes which are still fundamentally unclear. They're also a good reminder to us about the hazards of predicting the future. Now, recently, a journalist, apparently much younger than me, wrote this in the Montreal Gazette. He said, as a child of the 80s, I grew up with predictions of flying cars, space as the next suburban neighborhood, and domesticated robots to do all the housework. This was all going to happen by the dawn of the new millennium. But I have yet to see a flying car, although we're getting closer. No humans are living on Mars, and nobody I know has a robotic servant. Now, no one can argue that civilization has not come a long way, but futuristic dreams have given way to survival and to prevention. We are in the midst of a fascinating paradox. We face environmental, financial, technological, and societal turmoil, but we're living in an era of remarkable transformation. Now, if you're expecting to hear about flying cars, I'm afraid that you wandered into the wrong session. What I really want to talk to you about is the need for what the writer referred to as an era of remarkable transformation. I believe we are in a time of historical challenges for our industry, for our society, and for our planet. A time that demands that we think boldly about transformation and not just about traditional or incremental changes. I believe the job ahead requires us to maximize our intelligence, our creativity, and our ability to work together in order to imagine and build a more manageable new future. I want to begin with a look at some of the economic forces that will affect our fate in the year that has just begun, recognizing that the uncertainty hanging over the global economies makes it very difficult to provide reliable insight into what the future holds in store. Now, the current situation does not favor a business like ours. An industry that is incredibly capital intensive, it requires thorough medium and long-term planning and is highly sensitive to economic downturns. Today, there are two significant threats fueling fears on the other side of the Atlantic: the specter of a faltering recovery in North America and the sovereign debt situation in Europe. In the past 5 years, the certainties and the points of reference that we've been able to construct for ourselves from the end of the Second World War were abruptly swept away. And as often happens in such dark moments, we went on a search for the guilty ones. But I fundamentally believe that a different perspective is needed. We need to look further back in time if we're to find the explanation for what we're currently living through. Now, the current uncertainty is a byproduct of two improper, or at best incomplete, execution of two very large experiments. The first, which was clearly driven by and in the United States, has as a clear objective the deregulation of financial markets. And the second one was concocted in Europe, proposed the single market and the single currency as the solution to the political instability that had characterized Europe for hundreds of years and resulted as a final act in a tragic manifestation that we know as World War II. Now, the first experiment brought us close to Armageddon, and the second has the potential to finish the job. Now, just to put people's minds at rest, I'm not here to preach doom and gloom. In fact, I don't subscribe to the more pessimistic scenarios.